Today we continue our series on the temple cleansing in the Gospel of John by discussing a particular number that occurs in John's account of the temple cleansing. That number is 46, specifically 46 years. We already discussed Jesus' dialogue with the religious leaders in John right after he cleanses the temple. They come to him and they say, "Give us a sign of your authority to do this." And Jesus says, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." As I discussed in an earlier video, that comment of Jesus participates in an undesigned coincidence with the Synoptic Gospels because it's brought up in a garbled form at his trial later on. But the dialogue continues. The religious leaders are surprised and they say, as translated in the ESV, "It has taken 46 years to build this temple, and will you raise it up in 3 days?" Now, what do they mean exactly by this? Well, the Greek doesn't give us a whole lot more information. The Greek, very literalistically translated, is 46 years this temple was built. But there is no word ago there, and we can tell by the context that they are not saying this temple was built 46 years ago. How can we tell that? Well, because of the contrast with the amount of time that Jesus says, "I will raise it up." They, of course, are taking him to refer to the literal temple. The author explains that he's referring to the temple of his body, but they take him to mean the literal temple. And so they're not saying it was completed 46 years ago. They're saying it took 46 years to build it, and will you raise it in only 3 days? Moreover, they're not just saying it took 46 years and now it's done. How do we know that? Well, we know that from Josephus. Josephus says that Herod the Great began building the temple, and he began that in about 20 or 19 BC, back in the BC period, and the central core of it was considered to be completed within about 18 months. So that's been over for a long time, nothing to do with 46 years. But then that the larger project was not finished for a long time after this, till the 60s, not long, unfortunately, before the Romans came and destroyed the temple. So there was nothing at 46 years that was a time when it was considered to be completed. So it seems that they are referring to the time at which they are speaking. And this confirms the ESV translation. It has taken 46 years as of now to get it to this point. And will you raise it up in 3 days? They're mocking at that claim. What are you talking about? What else can we figure out from this 46 years? Well, we can place when this conversation appears to have taken place. If we start at that 19 BC and we go forward by the 46 years, we get to 28 AD. Now, that's not the end of Jesus' ministry, for sure. No one thinks Jesus died in 28 AD, and in fact, he did not die in 28 AD. That clearly fixes this at the beginning of Jesus' ministry. Moreover, there's another connection. If we go to Luke's Gospel, Luke 3, he says that John the Baptist came out of the wilderness baptizing in the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius Caesar. We can count that in two different ways. We can count it from an apparent co-regency that Tiberius Caesar had with Caesar Augustus, or we can count it a couple of years after that from the time when Tiberius Caesar began reigning on his own. If we count it from a co-regency, we have the beginning of John the Baptist's ministry sometime within the year 26 AD. Now, that would be a pretty good fit for that 28 AD Passover for Jesus' temple cleansing at the beginning of his ministry, because John the Baptist has his ministry for a while. He baptizes Jesus, and then after Jesus' baptism, sometime after, is this temple cleansing. That could be the first Passover of Jesus' ministry. If we don't date it from the co-regency, that just moves everything down. That moves the beginning of John the Baptist's ministry down, but it also moves down the beginning of Jesus' ministry. It is extremely difficult, without a lot of strain, to try to date this conversation in which they make this reference to 46 years any later than about 29 AD. And I would say even earlier is better, more likely 28. And I would say there is no way, it's virtually impossible to date this historically as a historical conversation that took place at the end of Jesus' ministry, 3 years at least later still. Now, you could try to respond, oh yes, well, the scholars are saying that John moved it. So by he made up this bit of the dialogue. That was just another way in which he was moving it, in which he was subtly showing that it occurred early in Jesus' ministry. Well, that would be awfully subtle. Imagine how complicated that theory is. That theory is that John did this calculation and he made up that bit of dialogue, and then he put it in there as what you might call a kind of Easter egg, so that if some of his audience were also able to make that calculation, which would be difficult in an era without Google and where everybody didn't have a copy of Josephus on the shelf, then his audience would say, I see that in the story world of John, this occurred early in Jesus' ministry. But then would they be misled? For them not to be misled, they would then have to further somehow read John's mind and figure out that this was a change that he made, that he didn't really mean to represent reality, and that the only temple cleansing actually took place late in Jesus' ministry, recorded in the synoptics. Now, that's a very complicated hypothesis. The far simpler hypothesis is that this describes an actual historical event that took place early in Jesus' ministry, and it was important to them how long that temple had been in the process of being built and gotten to its state of grandeur that it was there, the project of Herod the Great, and that they referred to that. It has taken 46 years, and will you raise it up in 3 days? That's by far the simplest and most probable hypothesis, that this is a historical record of something that happened, and therefore this 46-year reference, which is a subtle confirmation, confirms the early temple cleansing as historically recorded in John. Come back next time when I will be talking about the attempt to put theological interpretations upon John's alleged changes of historical factual details and how unconvincing those are. Thanks for watching.